Damian Mitchell back with you here for the next hour, getting you set for McElroy and Kublik in the morning, coming up at 7 o'clock, followed by Three Man Front at 10 o'clock. They're going to be out at Social Taco today, so make sure you stop by. Say hello to Pat Landrum and the gang for lunch. And then, of course, we have the wonderful Paul Feinbaum on at 2 o'clock, who we had on McElroy and Kublik in the morning with us yesterday morning at 7:15. But, Damian, with your day off and now coming back after a wild weekend of college basketball, we now know Auburn going back to their second Final Four, the first one since 2019 under Bruce Pearl. Alabama not going to back-to-back Final Fours. They got, honestly, kind of got smoked by Duke over the weekend. But so now that we know the Final Four is set, we're going to have two SEC teams in there. You're going to have Auburn taking on Florida. You're also going to have Duke taking on Houston. We know Alabama's going home now. Just what were your takeaways from the weekend, both for Auburn and Alabama, now that we know their fates for next weekend?
On the Alabama front, there's nothing to be upset about. When you think of just how the season went, the highs and the lows, and you still were one of 8 teams remaining in college basketball and host for a national championship, and you just ran across a better basketball team, no matter how you slice it up. I mean, Duke has shown all tournament, really all season long, besides a few blunders, that they're dominant. Like, they are a great basketball team. There's a reason why they're the number 1 seed. And it would have taken, almost like a Herculean effort for Mark Sears and the gang. And if anything, you just wish you had a better performance on the way out. And I think you have that little stain in your you have that little bad taste in your mouth. But I think collectively, when you look at the season, it still was a success. Again, this is the third trip in a row for the Elite Eight. Well, third trip in a row for Sweet 16, back-to-back Elite Eights. And I think when you look at where the program is heading, and I kind of had this conversation with a couple of my Alabama buddies. It's funny now. Like, now it's upsetting that you've changed your mindset from, I'm just happy that we made it to the tournament, to, man, I really thought we could have a national championship in basketball, which is good to have those expectations. And, the shifting of the guard with Nate Oates and just what he's meant to Alabama, and just some of the news we got just yesterday, as far as, the trend is still heading upward. There's some things that you need to address as far as, what is Alabama basketball now with Mark Sears gone? So I think there's a lot of things you have to question and just see where it goes from there. But if anything, you still look at the season as a success. Now, for Auburn, your season's still going on. And I think this is what the expectation was, with all the key pieces that you had returning, the emergence of Janai Broome showing up right when his team needed him the most, and showing that, I am the best player in college basketball. So I think that for Auburn, it's, can you get over this mountain? Now it's nothing but the top dogs anyway. So you're getting the best of the best. You've already beaten one team that's in the Final Four, but you lost to the 2 other ones. So now it's, okay, can we rectify what happened in the regular season now when it matters the most? And I think that Auburn has just as good a chance as anybody. Like, there's no more upsets. Now it's, if Houston were to beat Duke, yep, that's a number 1 seed beating a number 1 seed at their best when the game matters the most. If Florida beats Auburn, Auburn beats Florida, it's Auburn getting revenge. It's Florida, running out of gas here at the end. But all in all, say what you want, we got chalk all the way through, and we're getting the true national champion when it all said and done. And if it's Auburn, nobody's going to be surprised. If it's Florida, Duke, Houston, I think nobody would be surprised if when one of these 4 teams are cutting down the net come next Monday.
Yeah, and that's that's part of having, all 4 number 1 seeds advance to the Final Four for the first time. Well, second time ever, but the first time since 2008. That's the only other year that it's happened. So, yeah, I mean, I think at this point you just kind of look at it as, whichever side of it you're on, it's just kind of a clean slate, right? Like, regardless of how you've gotten to this point, you've gotten here, right? You survived in advance, whether you've had some close calls early on some of your games, like a Houston and a Gonzaga or something like that, or a Florida and a UConn, or your team like Duke, and you've beaten everybody you played up to this point by, I guess, kind of had it close in the Sweet 16. But other than that, I mean, you've beaten everybody by 20-plus points, and nobody's really questioning how good you are, how competitive you can be in the Final Four. But, yeah, at this point, just kind of a clean slate for these teams. You've gotten to this point. You've got a week to rest up. And now we know. I mean, we saw Auburn and Duke play earlier in the year, and that was an incredibly competitive game on the road at Duke. I think both of these teams are better than they were at that point in time. So that would certainly be interesting if we do get that rematch there. But you do have, I mean, Duke and Houston. If you just go off the Ken Pom rankings, according to Ken Pom, the Duke and Houston matchup is a matchup of the two best basketball teams that we've seen in the last decade of college basketball, just based on what their Ken Pom rankings are. And obviously, we've already seen Florida and Auburn do battle, and Florida getting the better end of Auburn down at Neville Arena in that one. But now coming back, and this is a Florida team that I would say going into the tournament, you would have said Florida was maybe trending in the right direction, whereas Auburn was trending in the wrong direction. And now, some people seem to have flip flopped on some of their thoughts with those two teams, and especially with Florida. So it's going to be interesting to see. We have a lot of time this week to preview what's coming up for you in the Final Four. Reminder: Auburn and Florida are going to be the first tip, the early tip on Saturday at 5:09 over on CBS, and then you'll have Duke and Houston that will come up after that. But we do have some big news in the transfer portal for college basketball. Yes, we are now having to talk about this just like we are in football. So the transfer portal actually opened last Monday. And, we talk about this all the time in football, where it feels like every single year, the number of players that get in the portal just continues to grow and grow and grow, even though we talk about, how many of these people are going in the portal and then they're just kind of left in limbo there and they're not finding another destination to go out of. And even though we continue to see that more and more people are choosing to gamble and put their name in the transfer portal. And so you had over 700 kids in the first 24 hours that had put their name in the transfer portal for college basketball, which was, I believe, double what you had in the first 24 hours last year, something around double. So we could see that it's continuing to grow, but there is some big news that you have on the transfer portal front. One of them is going to be Noah Williamson, who is a 7-foot tall forward from Bucknell. He has committed to the University of Alabama. He was the Patriot League Player of the Year this past year, averaged 17.5 points, 7.5 rebounds there for Bucknell this last season. But you can clearly tell, and we talked about this a good bit yesterday, but one of the things for Alabama that was apparent, and the Florida game, the Duke game, it appeared a couple of times this year, and that was that you were undersized in some areas. And so while you did go out and you got a guy like Cliff Amori to come over and be that rim protector, be that presence, first off, you knew he was a rental. He was only going to be here for 1 year as a graduate player, but you go and you play these Florida teams, you play these Duke teams, and it feels like every time that they go and they sub a guy in, there's a 6'10 guy going on the bench and there's a 6'11 guy coming out, or vice versa. And Alabama just didn't have those numbers, and Alabama just is a little bit undersized compared to some of these bigger teams. So you could see that was clearly going to be a point of emphasis for Nate Oates and his staff, and that'll certainly help pick things up after losing in the Elite Eight to Duke by landing one of the better rated transfer players in the portal at this time, and Noah Williamson, the 7-footer from Bucknell. Again, the Patriot League Player of the Year, averaged 17.5 points and 7.5 rebounds per season, or per game, this past season. So a big pickup there for the Alabama Crimson Tide. And I don't think this isn't going to come as a big surprise to anyone, Damian, but the biggest name, at least in these parts, to hit the transfer portal, and we've seen this from a couple guys now, where they are entering the transfer portal and declaring themselves eligible for the draft. Essentially, I mean, we went through this with Mark Sears and Janai Broome last year, where you hear what the NBA's, what their feedback is for you. Are you going to be a late first round pick? Are you going to be an early second round pick? Do they not think you're going to be drafted overall? And that kind of allows you to weigh your options in terms of if you want to come back to college, maybe what your NIL valuation would need to be in order for it to be worth it to come back to college for a year versus going to the NBA. But that is UAB's Yaxel Lindeborg, who has just been an incredible player for Coach Andy Kennedy the last couple of years. This last season, he was straight up robbed of not being on one of the All-America teams. There's absolutely no way that you could watch him play and watch what he did for UAB at times this season and not walk away and think that he was one of the best players in the country. And this isn't a surprise. Again, we knew if you keep up with NBA mock drafts, this is a guy that's been talked about And in some places is a late first round pick, but most places an early to mid second round draft pick. And so it'll definitely be interesting to see kind of what feedback he gets from the NBA because I certainly think he's the kind of guy that would probably come back for another year of college because the amount of money that he is going to be offered to come back and play for another year of college is going to be pretty astronomical, I would think. But he averaged over 17 and a half points a game this year, almost 11 and a half rebounds, 4 assists for the Blazers. And according to On3 Sports, a number of teams have already reached out to Yaxel Lindeborg. Again, no surprise here, but Arkansas, Kentucky, BYU, Michigan, Ole Miss, Georgetown, Memphis, Auburn, and Alabama.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
And I wouldn't be surprised if those are probably just, all the characters they could fit in that tweet. So I'm sure there's more schools as well. But no surprise, Damian, that with Yaxel Lindeborg announcing that he's entering the transfer portal, that there are a large number of teams and very prominent teams here, especially in the Southeastern Conference, that want a piece of him.
Oh, absolutely. And he's worth every text message, if just get him inside of your building and start selling it to him because he's going to have an impact no matter where he goes. And if you're Alabama, if you're Auburn, I mean, we know how NIL works. We know how the business of college athletics is now. Just pretty much wherever you ask for, just find a way to work it, and you will because he's going to be an impact player. And I think that again, if nobody watched him play outside of UAB, because we got a chance to see him, night in and night out, but I'm ready to see what he can do on the bigger stage as well, because a lot of people was hearing about his name, and not to say the American Conference is, just a bottom tier league. It's not up there with the SECs, the ACCs, Big 12s, whatnot. But you see exactly when his name hits the portal, what teams are reaching out to him. So the talent is absolutely there. It's just now can he do it on a bigger stage? And I expect no drop off. I expect no drop off from everything that he's accomplished at UAB. One of the most decorated players to ever put on the Blazer uniform, and his impact is going to be felt, for years to come. And I think that, if you're Auburn, if you're Alabama, you want to keep him in state and you want him on your squad. So I think that, Yax is going to have the pick of the litter wherever he's comfortable with, whoever he wants to, play for. I mean, think about it. Like, Kentucky is in the conversation, and who would have thought, 10, 15 years ago that a UAB player would hit the transfer, would transfer out and level up and get to a point where, the Arkansas, the Tennessee, the Kentucky's, Alabama's, Auburn's is looking out for him, trying to get him on your roster. So I think that for Yax, man, just be patient, make the decision that's best for you, and just continue doing what you're doing best. Because if it's only going to boost your draft stock, if you stay for another year, you're going to get some good money, no matter how you slice it up. So I think that for him, just find somewhere that you're comfortable with and let the chips fall where they may, because the basketball front will definitely be taken care of. And if you didn't know the name Yaxel Lindeborg this past season, you're definitely going to know it when he's on the bigger stage in the SEC, preferably.
Yeah, he's certainly a guy that, he's going to be one of those guys that next year, if he does transfer to one of these bigger name programs, there's going to be people coming, where did this guy come from? And we're just going to be sitting here going, man, where have you been for the last couple of years? But yeah, Yaxel Lindeborg, great talent. So no surprise there again. Would love to see him stay at UAB as well. I certainly would think that would be on the table with what, Coach AK has been able to do for him here in Birmingham and how he's been able to develop him. And you just know it's, unfortunately going to come down to the almighty dollar, and a guy like Yaxel Lindeborg, let's be realistic. He's probably looking at $1.5 million. I would think something in that range to come back for one more year of college basketball. So, there's going to be a lot of suitors, but I think at the end of the day, would love to see him stay at UAB, what he means for that program, what he means for Andy Kennedy. But if he does ultimately transfer, hopefully it's here within the state of Alabama. We get to continue watching him and cheering him on next year, whether it's Alabama, Auburn, UAB, wherever it may be. Just don't go to like Texas A&M or something.
Lord, no, absolutely not.
Yeah,
he wouldn't fit down there.
No,
it's not really his cup of tea.
No, hopefully not, at least.
They got the bread for it though. I will say, one thing I can't be upset about him is that That money runs pretty deep.
Yeah, it certainly does there. It certainly does. But yeah, so that's the big news out of the transfer portal. Again, Alabama lands a commitment from transfer 7-footer Noah Williamson, the Patriot League Player of the Year there for Bucknell this past year, and Yaxel Lindeborg, the star player for the UAB Blazers, announces that he is entering the portal as well as making himself eligible for the NBA draft. So we will see where things go from there. We do have some more news in the college basketball transfer portal. Could there be a reunion on the docket for a former player from a team here in the state of Alabama? Because he is back in the transfer portal. We'll dive into a little bit of that. We'll continue talking about Auburn, Florida, Houston, and Duke in the Final Four. Want to get your thoughts? What are your early predictions? It's Tuesday, so we've got time, as we know. You've got time to change your heart, change your prediction. How are you feeling, though, on this Tuesday morning, especially if you're an Auburn fan or if you're a Florida fan? How are you feeling about your team's chances going in to not only advance to the national championship game, but potentially cut down the net? So we'll dive into all of that and more when we return here on the Tuesday morning edition of Morning Jocks right here on Jocks 94.5.
Welcome on back into Morning Jocks. Jocks 94.5. Damian Mitchell alongside Conrad Van Order. And of course, you as well, our wonderful listeners, 205-834-9450. Taking a little bit of a peek at the Final Four. Listen, it's early. It's Tuesday. We're not going to hold your foot to the fire. But just what are your expectations for the matchups happening this weekend? Of course, Auburn and Florida, the rematch. I think Auburn's there. They're chomping at the bit, no pun intended, against Florida. And then Houston and Duke, man. I think, listen, in one of my brackets, I've got Houston in the national championship. I had a different opponent for them. I thought they were going to end up playing either in one of my brackets, the University of Alabama. Sorry, Alabama fans. Or they were going to be playing Arizona. And, well, Duke is there. Duke said, "No, there's a reason why we're the number one seed. So we'll find ourselves into the Final Four." But nonetheless, I think San Antonio is going to be it's going to be jumping this weekend. And I think that, and it's very different how the national championship in football is a lot different, or at least the feel of it is different from the Final Four to the national championship in basketball, where there's a lot of hype going into the Final Four, but you only have really one day to digest of, okay, this is the matchup, and then boom, the game is on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no kind of waiting period of, man, let's feel this out. Like, what do we think these teams are going to do? It's, no, you got Monday, and literally you have to flush everything that happens on Saturday because you have one day of rest to, get your mind right, and then Monday morning when you wake up, it's national championship day. So there's no waiting around period.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right about that. And, if you heard Nate Oates' post-game press conference after the Duke game, one of the things he talked about was how difficult of a team Duke was to game plan for on such short period of time because, if you're Alabama, you had, you played BYU and then you had one day essentially, and then you had to play Duke. And just with their size and their skill and how much depth they have, how much length they have, especially for a team like Alabama that's a little undersized, only having, essentially a day to go ahead and game plan and prepare and try to find ways to get your guys open looks, especially when you knew coming off of the BYU game, right? That style of play wasn't going to work against Duke in the sense that maybe you could jack up 51 threes, but you're not going to get the same kind of looks that you were against BYU, and you didn't. You saw that in the Duke game. And so trying to figure out how you scheme certain guys open and how you plan to stop a guy like Cooper Flagg, which, I mean, all things considered, I think they did a pretty good job on him. They only gave him 16 points, but, and at this point, every team at this point is going to be difficult to game plan for on just a day's notice. But, just teams like that are just so physically imposing. You could say the same thing about Florida as well, with just their size of how difficult that matchup's going to be. And so that'll be really interesting to see how that national championship game matchup plays out. Because again, with this, I mean, you have a week to game plan, you have a week to prepare. I'd also be interested to hear, from a coach's perspective, do you dare go ahead and start looking ahead to your potential national championship matchup? Not in the sense of, oh, well, we just think we're going to go in this game and win, but from a time standpoint of, well, if we do win the Final Four and get to a national championship game, we already need to have stuff ready to go so that we can make as much out of that 24-hour period as possible. So it should be a good weekend, though. And this is your reminder that Landrum Roberts will be out there live in San Antonio. He is heading out on Wednesday. So on Thursday and Friday on Three Man Front, we will have live reporting from the Final Four in San Antonio with Landrum Roberts, and we're calling it Landrum Roberts and Friends in San Antonio because we don't know who's going to show up. But
oh boy,
there'll be people.
Have you talked to Matt McLaren? You think he's going to ride over or fly over?
He is not, from what I understand. He is not.
If only Texas would have made it.
If only Texas would have made it. Well, maybe he's going to the women's Final Four because Texas is going to the Final Four.
That is true.
In the women's bracket. So yeah, if you missed it, just it's kind of, I don't know, kind of a cool coincidence that in the men's and women's Final Four, you have two SEC teams and they're both playing each other in the Final Four. So you have Auburn and Florida on the men's side, and on the women's side, you have South Carolina and Texas who are going to play in the Final Four. And if you missed it, UConn, they unsurprisingly advanced to their 16th Final Four in the last 17 seasons. So, we can sit here and Oh, it's because it's awesome, right? That Auburn's been to two Final Fours now in 6 years. Alabama went to one last year. And here's UConn going to their 16th Final Four in their last 17 years, where they're going to take on UCLA there on the women's bracket. If you we're not up to date on that, but yeah, that's a wild accomplishment for them. But yeah, cool. You get a all SEC Final Four in both the men's and women's side of the bracket. Did want to quickly, before we get to your phone calls, some more college basketball news that I'd kind of teased in a potential reunion in the state of Alabama, and that would be one Rylan Griffin. If you remember, the former Alabama shooting guard who transferred to Kansas prior to the season. Of course, Kansas, they were the number one team coming in the preseason rankings. They had national championship or bust expectations. Rylan Griffin leaves Alabama. It looks like maybe it's going to be better for both parties, right? Because with Alabama's depth and some of the guys they had coming in, you didn't know what that role was going to be for Rylan Griffin. He obviously had an opportunity to go and capitalize financially and go play for a contender in Kansas. So he thought. And he now finds himself back in the NCAA transfer portal. So that's just an interesting situation there because for both Alabama and Auburn, and we'll talk about this more, in the coming weeks, but there's going to be a lot of roster turnover for these guys. Just looking at Alabama right now, since their season's over, I mean, Mark Sears is going to be gone. Grant Nelson's going to be gone. Cliff Omore's going to be gone. We know that Nas Cunningham, he entered his name into the transfer portal yesterday. Reitzel is still a little bit up in the air in terms of he can come back for another year, and the expectation is that he will. But will that be at Alabama? Or will that be somewhere else? There's going to be a lot of turnover. There's going to be guys that go into the portal. That's just the way that it works. Now, I do think that they're in a good situation. I know Aiden Holloway has said that his plan is to come back and he wants to be at Alabama.
Okay.
I think Diabate's in a similar boat there. I would expect, Aiden Sherrell's probably a guy that you could get to come back with, kind of the increased role that he had later on in the season. You still got Houston Millette there, who transferred in this past year and then redshirted because of an injury. But yeah, I mean, Youngblood's going to be gone as well. So you're going to have a lot of room to work with if you're Alabama. But it's just kind of interesting. I don't know if that's something that Alabama would even kick the tires on. Maybe Rylan Griffin would want to come back to Alabama, but that's certainly a name that stands out because of the
familiarity. Would you welcome him back?
I mean, yeah, I look, I think he's a good player. He's a good 3-and-D kind of guy. Like that's kind of what his profile is. I would have liked to see him turn into a better player at Kansas. Because I think the reality for Rylan Griffin is if he comes back to Alabama, I could be wrong about this, but in my eyes, he's not a starter, right? He's a rotational piece. And so, would Alabama be interested in that? Would he be okay with that role? Or does he want to go maybe to a smaller school where he can be kind of the feature guy and, inevitably probably go in the transfer portal again next year if he's able to go somewhere and average, 15, 16 points a game. So, I mean, if he was okay with the role and coming over and coming off the bench, yeah, I certainly think he can be a valuable asset. But sometimes
are y'all gonna have enough in the bank after y'all get Yaks?
I don't know. You should be asking Auburn that.
They will. Those pockets run deep too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but y'all got it though. Y'all got it. Come on,
we'll see. We will see. A couple other players from around the SEC, though, going in the portal. You got Big Z from Arkansas. That's an interesting one. Because if you remember when he played Alabama, I mean, that dude couldn't miss from three. And then when he played Auburn, he couldn't hit anything. So we've gotten the best of both worlds, I guess, from him when he's played the state of Alabama. But Vicic from Arkansas, he averaged 8.5 points, 4 rebounds a game this year. That's somebody that's going to draw a lot of attention. You had Jacoby Gillespie from Maryland. He averaged 15 points, 5 assists, and shot almost 41% from the three-point line. That's a guy that's going to get a lot of attention. You have Keir Krissa from Kentucky. That was a guy that was expected to go in the portal as well. So already seeing some big names here from around the state entering their names into the transfer portal. And you imagine there's a kid, man, I cannot remember his name, but there's a kid from Kennesaw State. He is from Tuscaloosa. He averaged 18 points a game. We talked about him last week. That's another guy that's been kind of on the radar for both Alabama and Auburn. And then you also had yesterday Jaron Pierre Jr. from Jacksonville State. who was the Conference USA Player of the Year this year, averaged over 20 points a game. He has also entered his name into the transfer portal. And so there's a lot of talent here within the state of Alabama that we will look to keep. Hopefully, where they are now, they can stay put and continue on doing what they do for their great universities. But if not, at least getting them to stay here within the state of Alabama if they do decide to maybe make that jump up to the Power Four. But we do see your calls. We do see your text as well. So when we come back here on Morning Jocks, I want to get your thoughts on not only the Final Four, but maybe some of your favorite players, some players from your favorite team entering the transfer portal. What are your expectations for next year? Some additions that you might like to see us make, or maybe even some players that you hope enter the transfer portal, because after what you saw from them this year, you're like, good riddance. Let's get them off my roster and put them somewhere else. So we'll dive into all of that, hear from you, get your reaction when we return here on Morning Jocks. .635, welcome back into Morning Jocks here on Jocks 94.5. Conrad Van Order, Damian Mitchell here with you until 7 o'clock when we hand you off to McElroy and Kublik in the morning. Been talking Final Four college basketball transfer portal here this morning. If you missed it, the big news so far, at least, is Yaxel Lindeborg, the star for UAB, has entered the transfer portal as well as making himself eligible for the NBA draft. So we will wait to see what his future holds, whether it's here in the state of Alabama or elsewhere. And you also had Alabama dipping into the transfer portal last night and getting Noah Williamson, the 7-footer from Bucknell, to commit to the Alabama Crimson Tide. He was the Patriot League Player of the Year, averaged 17 points, 7.5 rebounds a game this past year. And then you also had a player entering his name into the transfer portal on the Alabama side of things, and Nas Cunningham, who had redshirted this season. So we're going to get to your text here in just a moment, but first let's go to the phone line where we have Edward in Calera. Edward wants to talk about Final Four. How are we doing this morning, Edward?
Morning. I'm doing wonderful, guys. I was in Florida for spring break, and I was watching the first two games. My brackets are on fire. I'm like in the top 100 of 2 million people in ESPN.
Oh, man.
I got all Final Four right. I was in Florida watching the first two games in a sports bar, and Florida that game was amazing. You know, Clayton take the game over. And then the last two games, I was in the state of Alabama at a Winks Place, a sports bar too, watching. And I'm telling you, it was pretty amazing. Even one guy that I was talking to, he recognized my voice. Said, "Man, you call Jocks." I listen to Jocks. We talked the whole time. That was a blast. And I have my heart wants to say Auburn, but I went to Florida.
Mm-hmm.
On the final, and I have Duke, and I have Florida winning everything. I think Alabama, they did great until they met all the big guys, and they need two big 7-footers. They got one, I heard today, so they get one more 7-footer with some point guards. They'll be able to cross the line and beat Duke, beat Florida, and beat Auburn. But it was so awesome, man. I'm loving it.
Yeah, no, that is it is awesome here in SEC country for basketball. Edward, we appreciate you calling in this morning. So Edward has Florida knocking off Duke in his bracket. I have Florida winning the national championship as well. Don't you, Damian?
No, I have Houston, but I have Florida in the national championship.
Okay, you have Houston knocking off Florida in the national championship. So one person that's hoping Florida's not playing in the national championship game on Monday, that's Don Don, because that would mean that they beat Auburn this weekend. How are you doing this morning, Don Don?
Hey, good morning, guys. Welcome back, Damien.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, guys. Me and PG had a good time talking yesterday. It's kind of like a war between me and him right now, but we all having fun. But Florida is a good team, as you know. I've been saying that all year, but I think we're playing a little bit better than we played when we played them. So we'll see what happens.
You have it's Tuesday, so you're allowed to change your mind between now and Friday when we talk, Don Don. But do you have an early prediction or a score prediction for the game?
Well, yeah, I think Florida's 2.5-point favorite, right?
I think it's 1.5, or no, 2.5.
Okay,
it's now 2.5. You're right.
I think we're actually gonna win. I'm looking at 80-76 right now, Auburn.
80-76. All right, so Auburn wins and covers. Okay.
And everything, and I think actually, guys, I think Houston's gonna upset Duke.
Okay.
I hope so.
Yeah, I was about to say Damien definitely hopes that's the case.
Okay. And everything, and but anyway, though, my Final Four, I still got 3 of the 4. I had Tennessee beating Houston in my Final Four, so I still got 3 of the 4. And in my bracket, when I did it, Conrad, I did have Florida playing Duke and Florida winning in my bracket. But you know, as an Auburn fan, I can change my mind. But on my bracket, I did pick Florida to win.
I don't think that's how it works, but.
Well, no, he's hedging his bet, so he can either win the bracket or be happy in real life.
I got you. Makes
well,
sense.
You know what, guys, though? But you know how you every now and then you do what we call a Sweet 16 poll, where you draw a team out of the envelope or out of the hat. And I'm in two different ones, and I got Florida in one, and I got Auburn in the other. So either way, Saturday I will win money, but I'd rather be happy with Auburn winning.
There we go.
Well, there you go, Don
Okay,
Don.
well, hey, well, everybody, I'll see everybody today at Social Taco. I'm pretty sure Landon, you probably can't come, but Damien, after you get done, we hope you join us. And guys, we'll see you guys later. Thank y'all for always a great show, fellas.
Thank you, Don Don. We'll talk to you later.
Landrum.
Yep. I'm Landrum now.
Oh. All right.
Tried really hard to shake that label.
All right. Okay. All right, Landrum.
Do we look alike?
No. He's more of Italian. He looks more Italian.
I mean, I love Landrum to death, but he's like 15 years older than me.
Just 15.
Yeah. Thank you.
Nice grace period.
Thank you, Don Don, for
Yeah. Sorry,
making me feel
Sorry,
nice
Landry.
and young this morning.
Sorry, Landry, we're not going to be able to make it.
I appreciate that. Yeah, well, now I'm definitely not going to make it. I was thinking about it, but he'll also be surprised when he gets there and Landrum's there already. So maybe that'll be a good surprise for Don Don there. But no, appreciate them calling in. You can call in as well, 1-800-239-9569. You can also text in on the courtesy GMC text line, 205-834-9450. And that is where we will go when we return here on Morning Jocks and Jocks 94.5. 6:46 here on your Tuesday morning. Appreciate you tuning in to Morning Jocks here with myself, Conrad Van Order, and Damian Mitchell. Here with you for a few more minutes. About to head to the courtesy GMC text line, but we do have, and we were just talking about this, so I'm glad that great minds think alike, but we do have a poll question up on Twitter at 3Man Front that you can go ahead and vote for, that we'll talk about later on today at 10 o'clock. But we were talking about Yaxel Lindeborg, the star player for UAB, who announced yesterday that he is going to test the draft waters, as well as has entered his name into the transfer portal if he were to decide to come back for one more year of college basketball. So we asked a simple poll question today. It's, where will Yaxel Lindeborg play in 2025, 2026? And your options are UAB, Auburn, Alabama, or the NBA. Because let's be honest, why would you want to leave the state of Alabama? Not even going to entertain any of the other options. So those are your four choices as it stands right now, and already have a good number of votes that are coming in. So right now, this will make Don happy. Auburn leading the way with 42% of the vote.
There we go.
Of where you think Yaxel will play next year. The NBA comes in second place with 27%, Alabama in third with 23%, and only 7.5% of you think that he will return to UAB for another season here in the Magic City. I did during the break real quick, though. I just went and looked at an NBA mock draft, and so this is from Bleacher Report, and I guess this is the official one that the NBA uses on their website when you're looking for the latest mock drafts. And according to this, they have Yaxel Lindeborg going in the first round with the 26th overall pick to the Brooklyn Nets. So in that case, I would assume that he would be gone if you're looking at a first round draft pick there in the NBA. They also have Janai Broom going to the Boston Celtics with the 32nd overall pick. That would be a very good landing spot. They have Walter Clayton from Florida going to the Suns at 29.
29?
Yeah, I'm surprised he's that low. Yeah, you had Fears and Trey Johnson in the top 10 from the SEC.
Understandable.
Knipple,
From old dude.
the bane of many Alabama fans' existence. Yep, he's a projected top 10 pick in the draft right now, so that makes you feel a little better. Maybe Lanier from Tennessee. He is 42nd pick. Condon, 46th pick.
Chaz Lanier's 42nd.
That's what I'm seeing right here.
Yeah, come back for another year. I think that number will change.
Yeah, so just keeping you up to date on everything there. But yeah, it looks like some people projecting that Yax could be a late first round pick there. Let's see. We have to the text line we go, where we have Joseph who chimes in. He says, looks like, he says two things on Georgia. He says Georgia's trying to land Jeremiah Wilkerson, a point guard from Cal who averaged 15 points a game this past year as a freshman. That would be a nice pickup there. He also said he's curious to see what happens with Silas Demery, who he entered the transfer portal from Georgia. He had a really nice year for them, averaged about 13 points a game for the Bulldogs this year, and he has already been in communication with Kentucky and BYU. It looks like he's going to be visiting with BYU later this week as well. So that's the latest there on Georgia. Let's see. We have an Alabama fan. They text in. They say, I feel like Alabama needs to part ways with Jaron Stevenson. I feel like he's a liability when he's on the floor. That comes in from Barry and Aniston.
But how much did you really get from him?
Yeah, that would be a dollar amount thing for me in terms of what what a guy like that costs to come back. Because I think, he's a guy that just based on his size, right? He's a presence just being on the court. But yeah, he certainly has regressed this year from where he was, as a freshman, and especially in the NCAA tournament last year where he really kind of turned it on, especially that North Carolina game. But yeah, I mean, I know that's a common one. I've heard that from a lot of Alabama fans of it's time to move on from Stevenson. And, I don't know. I feel like that's a guy, if you can keep him on the roster and it's not going to, put too much of a dent in the NIL. Like, he's a nice guy to have around, but, if he's got big offers from other places, I wouldn't be chasing him necessarily. Right. But yeah, I know that's, I know Jaron's one that a lot of Alabama fans are probably ready to move on from. Let's see. Somebody chimes in from Nashville. They say, excuse me. They say it seems like Auburn has an advantage game planning for the Final Four since they've already played all three teams in the Final Four. Maybe so. That is a good point. You have played all of them. You beat Houston, lost to Duke and Florida. So yeah, maybe that does come back and help you out there if you're able to advance to the national championship game. Let's see, Brew. Yeah, Brew chimes in. He says the same thing. Auburn's had the luxury of already playing the other 3 teams in the Final Four once this year. Well, that is why you schedule those tough non-conference games, because it pays off in March. Let's see. Thomas chimes in. He says, not only Yaxel Lindeborg, but every UAB player who played meaningful minutes this season has entered the transfer portal. Chris Coleman, Butta Johnson, Tyron Moore, Jabori McGeer, Tony, AJ Vasquez, all of those guys either entering the transfer portal, potentially going to the NBA if you're Yaxel, or graduating from UAB as well. So, yeah, it's going to be a time of change here on the South Side for Andy Kennedy. He certainly has his work cut out for him this offseason. Let's see. Chris in Tuscaloosa, he chimes in with Final Four predictions. He has Auburn knocking off Florida 76-74. He has Duke beating Houston 78-68, and then he has Auburn beating Duke in the national championship to bring the national title back to the state of Alabama, or to the state of Alabama for the first time. Let's see. Jamie texting in. Jamie says, Alabama's going to be a lot better without Mark Sears. Mark Sears was counting on way too much, and his talent wouldn't take him any further than he was. He had topped out on everything he could do collegiately, and that was as far as he could take that team. He'll never make it in the NBA as a starter or a top 5 player on a team.
Wow. Whoa. Hey.
Somebody's not happy
Simmer
about
down.
the game that Mark Sears had against Duke. Now, I will say, and I do not mean this in a critical way at all, I don't think it's the most far-fetched thing in the world to say that he's, maybe doesn't profile as a starter at the NBA level. I think his role is going to be, he needs to, find a roster that he can go in and do a private workout, impress them, and he can be a backup point guard, right? Like, he can be a guy that could be a spark off your bench. I don't think he's ever a guy that's gonna. No, I don't look at him as a starting 5 guy in the NBA. I don't look at him as a guy that's going to go and average, 17, 18 points a game in the NBA. I'd love to be wrong about that. And I do think that, for what he, lacks in terms of his size, and that's going to be a problem in the NBA. I mean, for how big he is, I think he's quite exceptional around the basket, right?
Yeah.
But, we've seen, going up against the bigger teams, Tennessee, Florida, Duke, it hasn't worked out well for him. And when you get to the NBA, that's
all you see.
That's all you see. That's what everybody's got. So, yeah, I'm rooting for Mark. I hope he lands and finds a role for himself in the NBA. I do think he's good enough to be a bench player in the NBA. But, I certainly don't. I'm not going to say he necessarily hurt his draft stock coming back another year, but he didn't help it. And now he's a year older, and so it's just it'll be interesting to see how he plays out. But
And also, you think he'll be better without him?
yeah, no, I don't agree with that.
That's
See, and I think a lot of people, and I brought this up a couple weeks ago, but I think a lot of people had started to get into that Jalen Milroe territory with Mark Sears. I do not think that is an apples to apples comparison.
no.
I think what you got from Mark Sears this year was significantly better than what you got from Jalen Milroe
1,000%
on the football field.
1,000%.
I mean, he was a first team All-American. Like,
Yeah, right. Like,
he was one of the 5 best players in college basketball. Like, just saying. Let's see. Let's see. Somebody says Hooley has gone to Louisville. Is that going back to UAB? Louisville. Not Louisville.
Be careful. Yeah,
Louisville.
be careful.
And Drake texted in, our resident Gator fan. He says Florida beats Auburn 87-86. So a lot of you picking
Hey, buzzer
very
beater.
close games
Buzzer beater. Walton Clayton Jr.
with this one. I wouldn't put it past him. And if Auburn has one, just tell Janai, just don't take one like at the end of the Alabama game. Pick a better shot. I think that would make everyone.
It's that Patrick Ewing. You don't practice that. No, we don't practice that.
No, you don't.
Game shots.
Nope. Well, it's going to be an exciting week here on Jocks 94.5. We're going to continue covering the Final Four as Auburn and Florida will do battle, and Saturday with a trip to the national championship game on the line. Appreciate all of you reacting, chiming in with us this morning. McElroy and Kublik in the morning.